I, 32, M, found out my long-term girlfriend, 30F, was cheating through her own texts. I never imagined I'd find myself in such a painful situation. For 6 years, Sarah and I had built a life together. We weren't just dating. We lived together, shared a joint savings account, and often talked about our future marriage, a home, maybe even children someday. It all seemed so natural. I trusted Sarah completely, believing that nothing could ever come between us. At first, the signs were subtle. Sarah began to change little by little. Her phone had more privacy settings, and she started going out more frequently with her work friends. At first, I chalked it up to stress from her demanding marketing job. I told myself that her long nights and extra outings were just part of her busy schedule. I even asked her about it once, and she laughed it off, insisting that I was overthinking. I wanted to believe her, so I did. But then things started to feel off. I began to notice a distance between us, a gap that wasn't there before. We would spend evenings together, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. My instincts told me that there was more to her behavior than just stress. I tried to ignore the nagging feeling and reassured myself that everything was fine, that I was simply overreacting. One evening, my friend Josh reached out to me with a message that would change everything. "Hey man, I don't know if I should be saying this, but I saw Sarah last night," he wrote. "She was with some guy. They were too close." Along with his message, he sent me a picture of Sarah at a bar. In the photo, she was laughing, leaning into a man, and her hand rested casually on his thigh. It wasn't explicit evidence of a full-blown affair, but it was enough to plant a seed of doubt in my mind. I felt sick and confused. There had to be an explanation. I tried to convince myself that there might be a misunderstanding. However, the image in Josh's message kept replaying in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I needed to know the truth, even if it hurt. In a moment of weakness, I decided to check Sarah's phone while she was in the shower. I hated myself for doing it, but I felt desperate for clarity. What I found shattered my heart. Hidden under a different name in her contacts were flirty messages and secret plans to meet up. The text confirmed that Sarah had been having an affair for at least 3 months. 3 months during which I had been oblivious to what was really happening. My world turned upside down. The life I thought I shared with Sarah was built on lies. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with thoughts and emotions, anger, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. I wasn't sure what to do next, but I knew that I couldn't ignore the truth. The next morning, I sat Sarah down and showed her the messages on her phone. I asked her to explain herself. Sarah froze, her eyes wide with shock. For a moment, I saw her searching for words, trying to come up with excuses. She started by saying, "It wasn't serious," and then tried to explain that she had been confused. Soon after, she blamed me by saying, "You've been so distant lately," and "maybe you aren't in love with me anymore." It was as if she was trying to rewrite the past and shift the blame away from her actions. I listened to her, feeling numb and disappointed. There was no anger in my voice, only a deep, aching sadness. I simply told her to pack a bag and leave. Sarah burst into tears, tried to reach out and begged me not to make any rash decisions. But the decision had already been made in my heart. I couldn't stay in a relationship built on deception and betrayal. After she left, I was left alone with the memories of our life together. I had to sort out not only my feelings but also the practical matters of our shared life, dividing finances, figuring out what to do with our apartment lease, and planning for a future that was no longer shared. It was one of the hardest things I had ever done. In the weeks that followed, Sarah attempted to reach out to me. First, it was desperate apologies, then long-winded explanations, and eventually, nostalgic messages with pictures from happier times. Every attempt to rekindle what we had ended in me shutting her out. I felt that our past was tainted, and I no longer wanted to go back. I wasn't interested in endless apologies or trying to understand how everything went so wrong. One day, as I was shopping for groceries, fate brought us together by chance. I was in the frozen food aisle picking up some basics when I heard someone call my name. I turned around and saw Sarah standing there, looking awkward and nervous, holding a basket full of groceries. For a brief moment, time seemed to slow down. I could see the hesitation and regret in her eyes, but I felt nothing stirring inside me. No anger, no sadness, just a profound sense of indifference. She managed a soft, "Hey, how have you been?" Her voice was tentative, as if she wasn't sure whether to approach me. I simply shrugged and said, "I've been good." I meant it. I had been focusing on myself, hitting the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and rediscovering hobbies that I had long neglected. I was rebuilding my life, piece by piece. Sarah sighed and added, "I miss you." I looked at her for a moment, and then I replied simply, "I don't." There was no malice in my voice, just a quiet resignation. That brief exchange was enough to put an end to any hope of reconciliation. Without another word, I turned and walked away toward the checkout line. In the weeks and months that followed, I continued to adjust to the silence of living alone again. The transition from we to me was not easy, and there were days when I missed the person I thought I knew. However, I also learned that I could be strong on my own. I was finally free from the constant shadow of betrayal and the need to justify someone else's actions. Reflecting on the experience, I realized how fortunate I was to have discovered the truth before things could worsen. Some people told me I was lucky to have found out before we got married or started a family. And in many ways, I agreed. The pain of betrayal was intense, but it was better than living a lie for many more years. It allowed me the chance to rebuild my trust in myself. And eventually, perhaps, in someone else, though I was in no rush to do so. The entire ordeal taught me valuable lessons about love, trust, and the importance of listening to one's gut feelings. I learned that even the most secure relationships can hide secrets, and that sometimes the signs of trouble are there long before you are ready to see them. I also learned that it's okay to put your own well-being first, even if it means walking away from a future you once dreamed of. Now, as I move forward with my life, I cherish the peace of being single and the freedom to focus on myself. I have rebuilt my routines, rediscovered my passions, and slowly started to believe in the possibility of new love when the time is right. I remain grateful for the support of friends and family who helped me through the darkest days, reminding me that my worth is not defined by someone else's betrayal. Sarah's betrayal changed my life, but it also set me on a path to self-discovery. I am no longer the man who was blinded by love and trust. I have grown into someone who knows the value of honesty and self-respect. Although the scars remain, they serve as a reminder of the journey I have taken from heartbreak to healing, from betrayal to self-empowerment. This is my story, a tale of lost love and the painful journey toward reclaiming my life. I share it not to wallow in sorrow, but in the hope that it might provide some closure or insight for anyone facing a similar situation. Remember, even in the darkest moments, there is a chance for a new beginning. I, 26M, found my wife, 23F, with my brother, 22M. I'm a military man living on a military installation, and for over 2 years, I have shared my life with my wife. We even welcomed a 3-month-old son into our family, a blessing that should have brought us closer together. Unfortunately, my wife has a deep-rooted problem with alcohol. Ever since we started dating, she has struggled with drinking, and her behavior becomes completely unhinged when she consumes liquor. At home, things are usually calm until she has a drink. I noticed early on that beer and wine would keep her more or less under control, but whenever she gets hold of hard liquor, she changes completely. It is as if another person takes over. I have seen her break televisions, punch and kick me, and even force sex before she loses all control. One particularly disturbing night, after an episode of extreme abuse, she passed out on the floor and even urinated on herself. This pattern has been a constant source of pain and fear in our home, a nightmare that I have had to endure day after day. After finishing my first military contract, I was transferred to a new duty station. I decided to invite my brother to live with us. I thought it would help him get out of our mother's house and teach him some responsibility by sharing the household expenses. Even though he has his own issues with alcohol and has been known to drink himself to sleep because of insomnia, I hoped that this arrangement would benefit him in the long run. For a while, it seemed like we were managing. We played board games, went disc golfing, and even cooked meals together. Our small family of 3 had moments of togetherness that made the difficult times a little more bearable. However, the situation began to deteriorate. My brother, despite my best intentions, is not someone who always makes the best choices, and his drinking has only gotten worse. I had noticed that my wife started spending more time with him in his room, especially when liquor was available. I was deeply troubled by this change and expressed my concerns to both of them. I told them that if things did not improve and my wife continued drinking, I would have no choice but to consider a divorce. I hoped that my words would serve as a wake-up call and that our home could return to some sense of normality. Then, one night, things took a turn for the worse. My wife had a bottle of cheap wine, which usually did not cause much trouble. We had sex, and after that, she decided to take a bath around 1 a.m. I fell asleep while she was in the bathroom, thinking that maybe the night would pass quietly. But about 2 hours later, I was awoken by the piercing sound of our son crying. I got up to take care of him, and after soothing him back to sleep, I realized something was very wrong. I couldn't find my wife anywhere in the house. I started to worry and searched every room until I finally walked into my brother's room. That is when I saw Hermie's wife in his arms, resting on his chest. In that moment, my world shattered. I felt numb, as if I was unable to think or even breathe. The betrayal was overwhelming, and all the pain and fear of our past seemed to come crashing down on me all at once. In a fit of anger and despair, I kicked my brother out without giving him a chance to say goodbye or grab anything. I told him to leave, and he ran without looking back. Now, I am left with a broken family. My wife is crying uncontrollably. Our son is inconsolable, and I am drowning in a deep, unrelenting pain. I don't know what to do next. Every decision seems impossible, and the weight of this heartbreak feels unbearable. Caught my wife sexting. I had to make a throwaway account for this, but I need to share my story. I was married to my wife for 5 years, and we had started dating back in high school. For the majority of our marriage, things went smoothly. We had good communication, and we rarely fought. We lived in New York City, but often traveled to our hometown in New Jersey to visit our families and friends. Thanks to the PATH trains that connected the two states, these trips were easy and stress-free. One evening, my wife and I went out to eat in NYC. While we were at the restaurant, we unexpectedly ran into an old friend from school. Although we weren't best friends, we had always maintained a friendly connection, and that night we ended up trading numbers. In the weeks that followed, we met up with him a few more times. During these outings, he usually brought along his girlfriend, and at first, I appreciated that we were all spending time together as couples. With his girlfriend present, I felt reassured and didn't see any reason for concern. However, during our third meeting, I began to notice subtle changes. I observed that my wife was giving our old friend a bit more attention than usual. At first, I thought she was just joking around or being friendly. When I later asked her about these small flirtations, she brushed off my worries, saying that I was overprotective and that her comments were harmless. I tried to trust her, but the nagging feeling in my heart grew stronger with each encounter. The situation didn't improve during our next outings. I noticed more instances where my wife's behavior suggested that she was more than just friendly. There were smiles that lingered a bit too long, touches that felt too intimate, and jokes that carried a hint of flirtation. Although I tried to convince myself that I was overreacting, the evidence kept piling up in my mind, making it harder to ignore the possibility that something was seriously wrong. A couple of weeks later, while I was making lunch at home, my wife left her phone on the kitchen counter as she went to the bathroom. My doubts and suspicions got the better of me, and I picked up her phone. That decision changed everything. I noticed a text message from our old friend, a text I wasn't expecting, because he usually called or messaged me directly to arrange plans. When I opened the message, I found a video attached that left me completely shocked. The video was explicit. It showed our old friend in a very intimate act squeezing lube on himself and pleasuring himself, while making distinct noises. I could clearly hear him clapping his balls with every stroke. My heart sank, and I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. As I continued searching through older messages on her phone, I stumbled upon a sex tape. The tape left no room for doubt. It featured my wife and our friend together in a passionate encounter. In the video, she was clearly involved with him, riding him while he moaned loudly. Every detail in that video shattered the trust I had placed in her. When my wife returned from the bathroom, I couldn't hold back any longer. I confronted her with what I had seen, and our conversation quickly escalated into a heated shouting match. Emotions flew high, and the room filled with anger, pain, and betrayal. In the midst of our argument, she coldly admitted that she felt our friend was a better man than I was. She claimed that I could not satisfy her in the way he did, and that I was not strong enough for her needs. Her words cut me deeply, and I felt a profound sense of loss and failure. The entire ordeal left me devastated. I spent the rest of that day in a daze, unable to process the betrayal. Later, after much soul-searching, I made the painful decision to leave our home and file for divorce. It was one of the hardest choices I have ever had to make. Thankfully, we did not have any children, which made the legal process a bit simpler, though it was still a very painful experience. We ended up spending a considerable amount on lawyers, but the proceedings went smoother than I had feared. I managed to keep the house, although I had to make some sacrifices along the way. Since the divorce, I have not found another girlfriend. The betrayal still stings, and I often find myself wondering why I wasn't enough for her. I question her words, and part of me even struggles to believe what she said about my shortcomings. Yet the evidence remains, and the pain is real. I share my story here not only to unburden myself, but also in hopes of getting some feedback from those who may have gone through something similar. This experience taught me a harsh lesson about trust and love, one that I never imagined I would have to learn in such a brutal way.
Found out my boyfriend is actually married with 2 kids. A year ago, I met a guy in the Navy who seemed like an absolute sweetheart. From the very beginning, he treated me better than anyone else ever had. He was thoughtful and kind away surprising me with flowers and small gestures that made me feel truly special. I couldn't help but be drawn to his gentle nature and the way he made me feel cared for. Over time, our relationship grew stronger. We spent many moments laughing, talking about our dreams, and simply enjoying each other's company. His warm personality made every day brighter, and I started to believe that I had finally found someone who truly understood me. Last weekend, I decided to visit him. I was excited to spend some quality time together, and we had a wonderful weekend full of fun, good conversations, and shared memories. Everything felt so genuine and promising. I returned home feeling happy and secure in our relationship, confident in the bond we had built over the past year. However, just 2 days after I got back, my world took an unexpected turn. While scrolling through Facebook, I received a friend request accompanied by a strange message. The message read, "Hello, I believe you and I have someone in common, and this person has probably told you a story, like I'm a crazy ex out for revenge, or some kind warning to not communicate with me because I say this because it's not the first time, which is why I'm contacting you like this, to avoid you being influenced by seeing my profile and ignore me. I'm not crazy, just passionate about not getting lied to, tricked, or cheated on. I noticed your interactions with Name here on Facebook, to my surprise, since he told me he deactivated his account. I also saw your texts and pics from this weekend, and I thought you should know he and I are not only in a relationship, we live together, we're married." Shocked and confused, I immediately called him. When he answered, I asked him who this mysterious girl was. Instead of giving me a clear answer, he told me not to respond to her message, and promised that he would call me once he got off work. I had a sinking feeling that he was going to try to spin the situation, insisting that the message was just a crazy ex's attempt to create drama. Later, I decided to reply to the message, and soon enough I began comparing stories with the sender. Her account confirmed several details that I had already been suspicious about. The more we talked, the clearer it became that something was very wrong. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, and the reality of the situation hit me hard. I felt devastated, foolish, and utterly heartbroken. I was angry with myself for not noticing the signs earlier. I had been so caught up in the sweetness of his attention that I ignored the red flags. It turned out that the man I had grown to care for was not only married, but he had deceived me from the start. The weight of his lies was crushing, and I knew there was no way to salvage the relationship. I decided right then that I would cut all contact with him. The situation became even more complicated when I learned that the woman who sent the Facebook message was his wife. Throughout the day, I kept in touch with her, comparing stories and piecing together the truth. When he finally called me, he tried to twist everything, claiming that his marriage was none of my business. I was done listening to his excuses. I told him exactly what I felt and wished him ill, not wanting any more drama in my life. Later, when he tried to apologize with another call, I made it clear that I no longer wanted anything to do with him. In the end, I realized that I had been a fool for believing in a love that wasn't real. Despite the initial sweetness and the happy moments we shared, I learned a painful lesson about trust and deception. I am still angry and upset by how everything unfolded, but I know that cutting him out of my life is the only way to move forward. Now, I am focusing on healing and reminding myself that I deserve honesty, respect, and genuine love.